Should I email the prospect or should I call the prospect? Like, that is the question. Which one is going to be the most effective for the prospect you're reaching out to right now? Or in general, which one is best for sales cold outreach? We'll answer that one in this email. In this conversation. Check it out. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, I'm calling, I'm talking to Matt Tharp. He is the CEO of Hunter.io. And if you don't know what Hunter is, I highly recommend you check it out. We're going to talk a little bit more about him in this episode, but it's a great way to be able to find email addresses. And it's one of the things I recommend in our training programs to a lot of our clients as they're starting off doing their outreach. Go ahead and check out Hunter. You can use a free version. You can get email addresses to get verified, and it's simple and easy to use. But Hunter.io, and there's at the end of this episode, I tell a story about how my wife used it and was able to land 2 clients for our podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, this show is designed to do 2 things. 1, teach you how you can build better pipeline with amazing episodes and guests like this one. And 2, how to accelerate deals to their pipeline faster. As we dive into this episode in particular, you're going to hear the idea of what works best, phone call or email, and how you go about utilizing that avenue so you can have better cold outreach. You're going to love this one. I'm telling you. Hello, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Donald.
I'm doing this pitch on the phone, but I think I should have probably done it via email.
Yeah, I feel like you would have gotten my attention a little better with that.
Dang it, man. How you doing, Matt? Welcome to the show, man.
Good, man. Good to see you again.
No, as folks can hear from what we've talked about in the setup there in the teaser, today we're going to be tackling the conversation around email. And I bragged about you guys and Hunter, some of the cool things that you guys do, so they kind of know about that. So I set the stage already for you, Matt.
Awesome.
The idea, though, you are allergic, from what I heard, to cold calls. I want you to, but there's a caveat to this, but tell me a little bit more about your feelings, why you feel email so much greater effect for sales reps than cold call. And there's some other reasons that could, make a difference. But for generally speaking, talk to me about that.
Yeah, right on. Okay, first off, a little bit of backdrop. Obviously, as CEO of Hunter, I have a vested interest in email being successful. So, my bias is right up in front. I'm not going to hide that. However, one of the things that brought me to Hunter, and one of the things that made me so excited about the brand and the business, was a commitment to email. And there are certain things about cold calling that for me personally just didn't make sense anymore. I like fast moving businesses. I especially like going towards, a sort of high velocity product led growth type strategy. And so when you're doing that, I find that often you're building a pipeline with your product. You're building a pipeline with your marketing. And your sales motion is really more about supporting that and then supplementing that. And so I really like sort of high velocity, low touch sales processes in my businesses. That's typically what I like, because you can build a much bigger flywheel. And I think you get, you get the ability to build a more robust, more repeatable pipeline. And one of the challenges with a sales-driven business is it's so dependent on the next deal. And especially when you're early as a sales rep or as a business, you may not have refined that pitch. It may not be turnkey yet. And so the challenge is, I think, for new businesses or businesses that are transitioning from founder-led sales, is that is a hard period of time for a business. And if you're dependent on cold calling, it's rough. It's rough on the reps. It's rough on the receiving end of those calls. The infrastructure is challenging because, let's all face it, if you're not getting a mobile number, that number is probably useless most of the time. And so I just feel like not only that, but we've all gotten really good at that little glass rectangle and looking at a phone number we don't know and declining that call, right? So everything about the current environment is sort of working against cold calling. And so
one newer one that you haven't even thrown in there yet is Apple. which comes in effect in the next couple months, um, and I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, I did
Yeah.
an episode on it, but the idea there. So go back to mobile number. If you don't have a mobile number, God bless you.
Yeah.
But now, all mobile numbers, the seller's going to have to give a pitch to an AI
Right.
if they're not in that phone, and that AI is going to be the new gatekeeper to get access to that person that would answer. So
As
dang
if
it,
mobile numbers weren't hard enough,
jeez.
right? As if you didn't already have almost every available technology to screen your calls before. Apple's getting ready to make it even harder. And I think,
Yeah.
what, like as a consumer, you're not mad at that.
No, I love it.
Right. But as a professional who's trying to reach people, it's a real
I
pain. And
hate
so,
it.
but you get it, right? The momentum of the industry
Yeah.
is moving in a direction where cold calling is becoming increasingly less productive and less efficient and less, frankly, the output is less. It's less. You can make less of a machine out of it. Now, that said, it is still something that can work sometimes, and especially if you've got a really high contract value or really high touch business, if it's a relationship building business, there is a place for calls. So I'm not like against phone calls in general, but I think if you look at the trends, and if you're a business, you're trying to think of like, where do I invest in trying to scale up my business? Where do I invest in sales growth? How do I make this a more repeatable machinery? I think what we're looking at is a world where phone calls are becoming less and less effective over time, and I think that's going to continue into the future. And that's why it's not like I'm like all biases on the table. It's like, yes, I'm pro email, but I think there's also the reality is like me personally, like this is the other thing. I'm at the end of the day a decision maker too. And if somebody gets through to my phone and I didn't like request that call, I guarantee you they are interrupting something I'm supposed to be doing, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's a terrible way to start a relationship because it's not on my terms at all. I picked up the phone, maybe I was waiting for a call, I thought that was the call. It's just like it's more and more, there's just more bad situations than good. So that's the whole reason. All joking aside, that's really what's behind it all.
Perfect. Well, let's go dive deeper into that though. Let's say that we are doing emails more, and I want to be more effective at this with an
Yeah.
organization. What should be my motion? Because here are some of the things that I come across. I mean, I agree 100%. The buyers are more, they're being more protective of their information. And again, no big deal against that from the consumer end. But then when you look at it from the sales motion, again, a little bit more challenging. And I'm seeing issues with emails as well, because
Yeah.
my emails are not getting through. What can I do as an organization with a good go-to-market strategy for, like say, email outreach, founder-led sales translating over to,
Yeah.
trying to grow the organization there.
Well, first, as a sort of motivating data point, we surveyed about 200 business decision makers in the U.S. Business decision makers worldwide this year, and we found that 61% preferred cold email as an outreach versus cold calling, which was less than 10. And if you look at the U.S. market, maybe you're instinctively thinking, "Oh, calls will be better." Actually, it's worse. 71% prefer cold email. So if you actually talk to the decision makers, the email recipients, or the people who are on the other end of the call, they vastly prefer digital outreach through cold email. LinkedIn's actually number 2, but it's only 29%. So there's a huge delta between their preference for channels being email first and then sort of everything else down the line. So first off, like there's some data that suggests this, but as you're going to go into email, there's a couple things you want to know. The first is that there's a lot there's a lot of valuable content about your tech stack, about like what products to buy, how to set up, how to configure your domains. Most of that is a solved problem today. Just follow the rules, follow all the guidelines that you find people post on their blogs, and you'll be fine. There's some technical stuff. Don't avoid it, just do it. But the real meat and potatoes comes into how you build and segment your lists and how you end up writing your content. And really, at the end of the day, your success or failure in cold outreach is going to come down to those two things. What we see is a huge drop-off on a list in terms of list performance if that list is above 100 people. Like, the performance almost drops to half. It's pretty remarkable.
Interesting.
And what that's saying is when people try to do email, they tend to make the outreach too big of an audience. And what ends up happening is the number one and number two problems are about like relevance and personalization. And so this is really about, as a sales or marketing professional, am I talking to the right people with the right message? And if I can keep my list small enough, roughly 100 people, I can pretty well tailor whatever my message is going to be. Whether you use AI or not, it doesn't matter. You still have to get the core concepts right. And so starting with a really good targeted list and keeping that list small enough to keep the message relevant, that's number one. The second is really about the message itself. There are some good rules, but I think number one, and this is the thing we trip over all the time, I think anybody does, right? You try to say too little so you're not over talking, or you try to say too much so that they have everything they need to make the decision. People forget the cold email is really about engaging in a conversation. You're not trying to close the whole deal in the first email. You're just trying to do some basic things.
Give me an example of what that might look like if I'm going to do a really, you guys do see a whole bunch of data come through,
Yep.
but what might that sound like if I'm working for you at Hunter, sending out an email to someone?
So, first off, it depends entirely on the recipient. Let's start with that. But
Yeah.
you want to establish a few things right up front. You want to establish credibility. Use a reasonable domain. Like ours is hunter.io, right? That's our primary domain. But when we do cold outreach, we use gethunter.io.
Yeah.
We use something where we do use email hunter sometimes. So it depends. But usually our email domains, if someone looks at that, they totally understand who it's related to. Oh, Hunter. Yeah, I've heard of Hunter, right? The other thing is that we do either content on those domains or we redirect those domains to the primary domain. Because what a lot of email tools do now is they make it really easy for you to click on the URL of the sender to see what their domain is like. So if you click that link and it just sits there spinning, you're going to bail out, you're going to delete that email, and you're going to move on. So you got to remember you're trying to do enough things in that initial email to establish credibility. And a lot of that starts with some really basic things around what domain are you using, what email, what subject line, and are you creating enough of a brand impression that somebody who looks at it would recognize your brand and would think, yeah, I should keep reading. You get about 2 to 3 seconds to establish enough credibility for them to read the whole email. And even then, you're only going to get like 10 seconds.
Dang it. It's tough.
Yeah. It is tough.
So, and one of the things, so several components I'm putting notes down here for: make sure the list is short, make sure it's highly relevant to that list, make sure you personalize it to some degree, because the way we look at this and the way we teach our team and our clients is personalize it to the role of the individual, and then obviously the more relevant you are, then black cats in Milwaukee, like that's pretty relevant as opposed to just general black cats, right?
Right.
In summertime. But then the other part, your domain, make sure you have a set domain that is not the main one, so you can't burn that per se.
Right.
And then subject line. Talk to me about subject line. What are you guys seeing when it comes to subject line or trends that makes it more effective?
I've actually seen a lot of variants in subject lines that can be successful, but typically there's something in the subject line that speaks to the problem that the buyer has. And that way, so sometimes people get a little too playful, I think, in email subject lines. And they're like, oh, I'll just get them with a gotcha line. And then they open the email and then I've got their attention, right?
Delete.
Yeah. It's like, yes, you could walk into the room with a purple suit on and get everybody's attention. But did that establish your credibility, or did you become the guy with the purple suit? You've got to think of the subject line the same way. Am I speaking to a problem you care about in a way that gets you to read it so that when you come into the email and I double down on that problem, I'm in the right, I as a reader am in the right place. It's a lot like what you're trying to do with like a web page or a landing page. You optimize for a particular keyword, or in this case, a problem, and you want to make sure right there in the subject line that you've confirmed they're in the right place. And then right there in the first sentence or 2 sentences, you want to support that. Because I think ultimately at the end of the day, you'll never get timing right. You kind of just have to hope on timing. You have to think about this like a brand impression. I almost think about it a little bit like radio advertising. We've all Some
What do you
of
mean
us
by
are
that?
old enough. Well, some of us are old enough to remember radio advertising being like a primary channel. And the thing about that was you had to sort of be running it all the time because it wasn't like, even if there was a big promotion going on, it wasn't like if you just ran it for that week, you'd get all this information. But what it was that when they heard it that week that it mattered to them, they already had a bunch of brand impressions kind of creating a sort of warm environment in their brain. So when they finally had the problem or they were thinking about the problem, when they saw your brand connected to the problem, it was like, oh, instant recall. And I think that's a problem that's really well managed by cold email that people don't ever think about. They're so busy trying to go for the close in the first email, they forget it's still a brand impression. There's value that builds over time with these things. And so establish the problem, create a trustable brand impression touch point out of the email. Make sure you explain in what way you're going to help solve that problem. How are you going to remove that pain for them? It's just a pitch. It's like an elevator pitch, but you're trying to get it as concise as possible around like usually one single problem. And then if there's interest, would they like to continue? Hook them with an easy call to action. Let them see something, let them click a link. If you're afraid of links in that first, have a simple reply, and don't go so fast to the takeaway. You know, a lot of times what they'll do they'll send the first email, maybe they'll do a bump, and then they immediately be like, okay, I guess this is not for you. It's like, dude, this is all 1 week. I'm still thinking about the first email. You know, like, so you gotta like pace this a little bit better and think about it a little bit more holistically. And I think generally then it tends to perform better.
I want to emphasize one thing you shared was to establish one problem. I found that to be when I talk to and you mentioned the idea of conversation as well. One of the things that we teach in our program, because I find sometimes we are speaking to the prospect as opposed to trying to have an engaging conversation and pretending, just realizing, go back to what you said, with that rectangle device in our hands, we're so used to, and I probably say maybe half of my email, checks are coming from that. Like I'm checking the email from the phone. So it's the idea of making it conversational and speaking to one problem, because when you start giving me 2-3 problems and then you have 4 call to actions, it just makes it so convoluted that I can't process it. It doesn't make it easy for me to push yes, send more information, or open to learning more. And I think that's right. An important factor.
One of my favorite cold email experiences was actually somebody who cold emailed me, and it was one of those where they did everything right, although it seemed like the easiest, most basic email. It was like, I think it was less than 40 words, might have been closer to like 30. But it was very direct. It was very to the point. The subject line kind of indicated what the problem was, and it said something. I'll get it a little bit wrong. I should have it memorized, but it was. They were something like, "Are you tired of trying to do forecasts in Google spreadsheets?" Now,
you're like, yes.
If you're a CEO or a CFO or a founder, the answer is 100% yes. So, yeah, exactly. So easy click, right? Easy open, and then the pitch was easy. It was like, most founders we talk to are really tired of trying to do forecasts for their VCs or their board in Google Sheets or spreadsheets, and this is what our product does. And it was like really straightforward. Would you like a demo? Heck yeah! Like dead. Now, they might have even emailed me 3 times previous to that. I didn't notice. I don't know for sure, but I know on that email that was a problem that I absolutely know I have. I know if somebody can offer me a solution to that problem, I will take advantage of that whenever I see it. And it's always going to be there. So even if I don't do anything, the problem is the same. And so I'm still going to want to know about that 30 days from now. So even if I'm not quite ready to activate on that email as a buyer, I still get the brand impression. I'm still like, yeah, this is a problem. Maybe I'll even set a reminder for myself on this. Maybe I'll even go to their website and bookmark it. I'll take some additional action. And the reason why, they made the problem super clear. They didn't try to tell me too much. It was like, if this sucks for you, we can help you. Here's a demo. Like, that's it. And that's really everything, right? If you're trying to do more than that, you can pretty that up. You can have some fun with it. But if you're trying to do more than that, you're probably trying to do too much.
Yeah, I think that's probably the critical part there. Don't overcook the grits. And it doesn't have to be too complicated. I mean, we start off this episode, and I did it. Sophie, in a joking way, like, what is that exact formula? I don't think there's a perfect formula. I think there's some elements, like you're saying, that just you should follow, but don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Talk to the person, but it's a more preferable way for me to get in touch with you, with majority of our executives, because that's how they're going to go about doing it. Do the LinkedIn side, of course, and for the love of everything that's holy for me, I'm still going to have a cold call emotion in there, but the majority, I'm probably going to lead. I lead with LinkedIn, and then we do an email, personalized email, relevant email, and then I use phone for those who are engaging, opening it
Yeah.
up, and just doing some outreach with that as well. But
I think that's a great program. I think
yeah,
that's a really good way to go about it. Multi-touch is better. I think
yeah,
anytime you can get more impressions in front of people, like just psychologically, we know that that works.
100%. There's a sales leader listening to this, and he's thinking about it from his perspective. He wants to get his team going, and he just feels stuck right now. They're sending emails. They're not seeing the success that they want initially. What advice would you give him in the last piece of this episode?
Hmm. Well, the first thing I would do is I would take a step back and I would evaluate whether or not the message is formatted in a way that makes sense for the recipient. I know that sounds basic, but let me explain. If you're going to talk to a CEO or a CFO, that cold email that worked on me is brilliant. It's straightforward. It's to the point. There's no fluff. It came directly from somebody. Like, it was obvious that this was like a real pitch for a real product. Um, if you were sending a message to my CMO, you might want to have a little more fun with it. You might want to have some personality in there, especially, given that that's something that audience, like, maybe not a CMO at an enterprise company, but if you're talking about a marketer at a small to medium sized business, yeah, they think they're constantly challenging themselves and their own team to have some fun and make things more clever. So if you don't think about that when you're reaching out to a CMO or a head of marketing at a mid-sized company or something, you're totally missing the boat on the message. They don't want direct, simple, to the point, like a CEO or a CFO would, right? And so I think, like, one of the things that I often find when I do, like, teardowns with customers and I take a look at their emails and I try to figure out what's not working, one of the first things I notice is just the message doesn't quite work for the audience. And I think that's like the number one thing. There's lots of tools out there. Figure out how you can use those to make sure that message is more tailored. And in cold emails, sometimes what that does is then somebody will send me an email that'll, in the first message, they'll have jammed a bunch of personalization variables. And in the first message, will say something like, as CEO of a company, I'm like, I don't need you to tell me my title to, like, make me think that this is personal. That's not going to work. Telling me that you understand the problems I'm facing is how you're going to get through to me. Communicating in a way that makes sense for somebody who's as busy as I am, that's how you're going to get through to me. And I think people miss that. They think, let me just do what the tool can do, not how do I use the tool to get the right message across to the buyer. And I think it's that little switch. If you can flip that switch, that makes a huge difference on your cold outreach.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. If folks want to learn a little bit more about you, Matt, and about what Hunter can do for them and how they can take advantage of it, want to give a quick elevator pitch, and then also how they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So first off, the best place to find anything is hunter.io. And you can go to our website. It's very content rich. You can go to hunter.io/blog if you want to kind of read a little bit more in depth and get into some more testimonial case studies, use cases, etc. So go there. I'm also on LinkedIn. I tend to not be a frequent poster. I tend to only post things that I think are really interesting or important to read. But I'm also always open to connecting with people who want to reach out on LinkedIn and have a question and want to chat. So either of those, please look us up. And look, if you're in this business, Hunter has some part of our platform that will help you, whether that's the cold email campaigning component or whether that's just better data. That's what we specialize in. I think at the beginning of our brand journey, we were really focused on the data. And so we have just continued to double down on making sure we have the highest quality data that we can possibly offer anybody in the world. And I feel like we do a really good job at that. Like, our email verification product is probably one of the best ones out there. And I would highly recommend use it for segmentation, list management, verification. Make sure the people you're reaching out to are the right people.
Can I give a quick testimonial real quick? So
Absolutely not.
I didn't plan this. I didn't plan this. He's like, of course, Donald. He's like, send me the raw recording too. I'll use this. So when our podcast back in 2015, 2016, we started, 2016, we probably started doing more sponsorship outreach. We had landed one with Prezi, and we thought we were hot stuff, and we feel like people wanted to, that was inbound. People wanted to, explore it.
Yeah.
So my wife has nothing to do with sales. She doesn't have a sales bone in her body. The only DNA she has is what I rub off on her.
Okay.
So she started doing. She's like, let's try to pitch some people. So she even found an email at that point, and I doctored it up. And then we started pitching people. We built a list on. Just went to conferences, people that were sponsoring conferences, and then we used that email, and then I taught her how to use hunter.io.
Nice. Love it.
She sent emails out. One of the companies, they're no longer on prospect.io. They came directly from that. We also had another one with another CRM company that came directly from that. But several deals closed directly from her usage of hunter.io. I went on and did the close, but she booked the appointments, got people in the shoot. So I'm telling you, Hunter doesn't play, and we recommend it to all of our clients as one of the options out there. So there's several more in the market, but I recommend Hunter as well. So guys, that's my pitch for Hunter.
Thanks, Tom. Look, I'm really proud of our team. The team works really hard to make sure we're delivering valuable things and not just cool shiny objects that might get people's attention for the next week. And we just keep making the product stronger and better. So check it out.
We'll keep recommending it. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll put all your information down in the show notes. Appreciate it. That was Matt Thorpe. Go ahead and connect with him. We have his information in the show notes down below. Tell him you heard him here on the Sales Evangelist podcast. Connect with him on LinkedIn. He shares amazing stuff. And hunter.io, they have a lot of dope episodes. I'm not getting any kickbacks. It's just an amazing platform, awesome tool. And I would tell you, if you're starting your cold outreach, if you're using cold outreach, or if you're trying to do stuff, use it. Highly, highly, highly recommend you take advantage of it. If you want to find out how you can test it out, you can go ahead and watch some of their videos and some of their content on their site, or you can go ahead and hit me up, and I'll be more than willing to tell you how we've utilized it. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. As always, I want you to thrive. I want you to succeed. I want you to raise your level of thinking, but most importantly, I want you to go out and do big things. See you on the next one.